Give us a little background, and we're going to jump right into it because I think this is an important program.
Okay, well, mainly just to actually, now that I think about it, do you have that? There's the image? What's the image titled? Yacoba predicts Abu vocab flight. Do you have that image? 'Cause I
Oh,
think
I
this,
have that image. So
yes, I think that's an important one to put up because the first question might be like, why are we picking on these poor, gentle souls? You know, and just to be clear, as per this post that's on the screen now from Yacoba, who's one of the two Teo twins, it's not us chasing them; they're chasing us. We're running from them, and pretty soon we'll both have our tails between our legs. But we figured, in the meantime, before they fully crush us and embarrass us, we thought we'd take a little bit of a look at some of their recent stuff, their stuff on cartography, their stuff on DNA. There is sort of a trend where they put out these challenges. They sort of dare people to look at their stuff, and then they get upset when people do. So I was thinking maybe in this discussion, we'll discuss some of their uncomfortable relationship with maps. That'll be like a little brief cartography section, and then maybe discuss their genetics model. Like their confusion about Lemba DNA, or have a little fun with their I don't know how to put it, their less than stellar autosomal mathematics, and then also cover, which I think is a fun subject, Teo's sort of ongoing, I don't know if I want to say beef or conflict, but with the Yap Gang, which is a very interesting subject in my opinion, and quite a lot of videos on that on the Genesis 49ers account.
So we are not dealing, everyone should understand, we are not dealing with one Westers here. We never said we were. Just make that clear, everybody. We're dealing with a really large YouTube platform, and there's other stuff involved. And they're down with a number of prominent Hebrew Israelite personalities online. Teo Ministries, the End of the World Ministries. That's what it's about, and you can see it on your screen there. And you go down and you look, and 44. Let me make this bigger. Almost 45,000
subscribers.
Yeah, that's significant. They have their Patreon. They have what is this? I don't even know what this is. Oh, looks like they supposed to create a website, but they haven't done it yet. Okay, well, but they've got their Patreon. I'm not upset at that. I'm just pointing out. This is 343 patrons.
Is that a lot? I don't have Patreon, so I don't know. I take it that's a lot.
It's significant in our little urban apologetics world. We're like, if you compare it, for example, a little old me, I think that's like more than 3 times or something. I don't know. I mean, it's
not bad. I got 0, so I don't have a Patreon. Yeah. So.
And I'm my point by this, someone's going to say I'm tripping on this. I'm not tripping on this. What I'm doing, I'm showing their influence. You know what I'm saying? I'm showing their influence and their significance. I mean, it literally says on there, the end of the world as we know it. Like, these dudes have predicted the end of captivity and all kinds of that a number of times. Let's see. Let's look at their channel. One last thing, and then I'm doing this to show people we cover Hebrew Israelism and we try to go in depth. But
and it's a very diverse spectrum.
Yes, diverse. Yes, it is. And you can't cover everything. But here's some of the people they're affiliated with: Dante Fortune, Sister E, Sean at Large, Covenant Coverings.
And in the immortal words of Berean, shout out to Dante.
Yeah,
I was thinking about Dante as we were approaching this show, because the Teo twins, they often push this idea that, like, if we disagree with them, we're attacking the entire Israelite spectrum.
Right.
And Dante came to mind. A number of people come to mind, like, for example, like some of my stuff on language, like the Pews or Lashon Kodash. Not that they're proponents of Lashon Kodash, but like there's Israelites who agree with me, and so too with the genetic stuff. Like, I think I find a lot of common ground with the Yap Gang and even Dante. I don't think he's going to say anything about it publicly, but I don't think Dante is as bothered by my recent work on DNA as the Teo twins are. If you apply my methodology consistently, it works out positively for Dante, not so positively for the Teo twins.
Look at these popular videos. Fall of the Gentile Powers, 203,000 views. End Time Prophecy, 163,000. How to Scatter Israel Return Home, 136,000. A Targeted People, Rome Wants You Dead, 107,000. The Plagues Are Here, 101,000. By the way,
they have a video where they, if I'm not mistaken, they claim that the current Chinese president, Xi Jinping, might be the Antichrist.
Okay. How to Begin Researching, 94,000. End Time Prophecy, 91,000. End Time Prophecy. I mean, you guys, you get this idea. You see? Here's an important one. Why I believe the 400 years prophecy applies to this captivity. In 2018, these guys are false prophets here. And it's really not debatable at this point, I don't believe. But, you know, somebody will be upset and say they're going to sue us for slander or something like that. But that's fine. We've heard that before. Okay, so we're going to get into this now. Now that now I hope the audience understands why we're doing this. You know, I tried to show everybody. Okay, you know that.
But and also because what you showed. I mean, like we said, they're not. We're not picking on these poor gentlemen. We're fleeing from them, according to what they wrote. You know, according to that image you showed a moment ago, that wonderful Facebook post by Jacoba.
Yeah. All right. So what is as we start this program, like I said again, going in depth here. There's a lot to cover. So everybody, hang in there, stick in. You're going to learn a lot. We're going to have a good discussion. You are blocked by Jacoba on Facebook. He's one of the two gentlemen we're going to be mainly discussing. You're blocked by him, correct?
Both of them blocked me. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
They and it's funny because they blocked me after I started to explore their model on genetics. Basically, they blocked anyone who's familiar with their model and continues to question them. So they blocked me. They blocked, if I'm not mistaken, the entire Yap Gang, Orthodox, Moor. You know. Oh well.
Yeah, and look, hey, while we're doing this, if you believe in this kind of Christian apologetics ministry, part of it is polemics, where we criticize these bad ideas and expose them on a scientific, historic, and biblical level, like we're going to do tonight. Consider becoming a patron. You see what we're up against. Like, these guys are massively supported, and you know, none of the Christian urban apologists have this kind of support. And I'm not crying or whining. God will provide, and you know, whatever. Like he always has, he always will. But you know, the world has us outnumbered in so many ways. And this is an example. Consider becoming a Patreon of this channel. I don't say that probably enough, but I don't remind people. But now that I just visited someone's Patreon, it's patreon.com/vocab. I don't have anything like the numbers they have. And that's fine, but it helps because video editing and producing materials for promotion, there's a long list, and local events, because we're involved at a community level. We're not just on the internet here, you know, for what we do. And it's very important. Can someone drop that link to have people become a patron? It is on the top. It's on the banner that scrolls. See that? Patreon.com/vocab. Just sign up, and we have the main benefit is you get some inside posts that not everybody gets, and you get access to early links sometimes, and then we also do a monthly hangout meeting. So those are some of the main things. But let's get this started because I don't want to spend too much time on that. So first of all, let's look at cartography. So the Teo twins, Yakub, and what's the other gentleman's name?
Tayu. I don't know what his name was before, but he changed his name to Tayu or Tayu to reflect the way, this pronunciation of their acronym. I don't know, but he spells it different. He spells it Tayu. I say Tayu. Sometimes it's
Jacoba and Tayu.
Yep, those are the twins.
I apologize. I think I just said Yakub. I'm sorry, Jacoba and Tayu. Okay, yeah. Eek cool. Says he'll become a patron, and Jay wills too. I hope you do. Seriously, you guys see, I'm busy. I put in work. I'm not perfect. I would never claim that. I'm not claiming I'm the busiest man, you know, but we put in work and we try to bring you stuff that's really niche ministry. Shout out to Dunamis for the super chat, our first, and that also is another way to support, and it does help what we do. So here we go. Okay. So we're going to look at this basically fabricated haplogroup. Haplogroup G, what you call a frequency map here. So what do you want me to show first as we start to discuss this? I've got videos up and I've got pictures up, Abu, but you let me know which one you want first. What you want?
Well, just for fun, do you have that one video clip I sent you? It's titled "Every Fake Map Catch.mov." I don't know if that'll work.
Oh
If not,
yeah, yeah, I've
this
definitely
is
got
just
that.
just to set the tone, just as a joke, because
Let me play that.
let that roll one more time.
Yeah, yeah, one
No,
more
I'll
time.
explain this.
That deserves a
So-
replay. Hold on. Well,
So just to give the background to it, there's the Yap Gang, this team of Israelites who are into genetics, and they're pretty sophisticated on the subject. They have a very intelligent and mild-mannered young man who I admire amongst them. He calls himself the Hebrew of Israel. And the last time we did a show on genetics, we did a thing on Yakoba on Teo Ministries, and they kept referring to somebody as the lion that is a coward, the lion that is a coward. I found out later, I remember at the time, we were like, who are they referring to? We didn't know. They were referring to this young man who calls himself the Hebrew of Israel. And one of the reasons they were mad at him is after Teo Ministries found out, and it sort of got they themselves unwittingly leaked, that their haplogroup is G, they were embarrassed by it. So they tried to put up a map showing the frequency of haplogroup G in the Levant, and the first person to catch that it was a doctored map or a fake map or the wrong map was this young man, the Hebrew of Israel. So I made this because they're big into memes. So I made this video meme as an homage to the Hebrew of Israel, snatching that fake map right out of their stream and showing it.
I get it. I get there's like the double on snatching it out of their stream and catching it. People are saying they want to go watch Bloodsport now.
Yeah, that's exactly where it's from. I figured guys our age would appreciate that. The younger crowd might not be Bloodsport fans.
Also, shout out to Jonathan Crocker. We've got another super chat. You guys are definitely coming through tonight. Appreciate that. If you know who the Teo twins are or anything about what they do online, I'd love to hear your comments. I'd love to hear your comments about them in the live chat.
If anybody's not blocked by them, invite them.
Yeah, good one. If anyone's not blocked by the Teo twins, then please invite them to the live stream. Okay, so what are we going to start with as we look at this fabricated haplogroup G frequency map?
Okay, if you could, let's see. I guess if you could pull up that video titled Debate on Are We Japhet. This was a show on Sister E. She had the young man, the Hebrew of Israel. I think he was calling himself the Lion of Israel at the time, and that's after this they started calling him the Lion that is a coward. If you pull it up, jump to like the 1 hour, 1 minute, 38 second mark.
Mm-hmm.
You'll see this is where he started to point out that they've been using the wrong map, and you'll see the map, and it's only helpful in the sense that you see how upset they are.
Okay. So
you need a timestamp?
Yeah, what is it exactly?
1 hour, 1 minute, and maybe let's say 35 second mark or 38 second mark, but basically 1 hour, 1 minute.
Okay, that works.
And let it play for like 3 minutes.
All right,
The main thing here is to show how upset they are when he pointed out that they're using the wrong map.
Okay, so the wrong map for what though? I want a little more. I want to make sure everyone understands what we're watching. And why does this matter exactly? I want to make sure people really understand this. I'm not, there's a lot going on here. Help us break it down.
I'll give an explanation. So if you,
I'll pause it, but go ahead.
The background to it is this: most Israelites go by a patrilineal or paternal definition of Israelite, where you are an Israelite if your father's line goes back to Jacob, right?
Does everyone understand that? So most Hebrew Israelites, they determine if you're an Israelite based upon who your father is. Okay, step one. Okay.
So now the Teo twins got into DNA. They checked their DNA. It turns out they have haplogroup G, which is a very old and predominantly European haplogroup.
So the Teo twins have haplogroup G, which is an old European haplogroup primarily. Okay, step two.
All right. The majority of the West African diaspora in the Americas have haplogroup E. That's not the only haplogroup amongst African Americans, but it's the dominant haplogroup amongst
I think 70% of Black Americans are E from the stats that I've read. Okay, so they would be in the 30-some% minority who do not. Okay, step three.
I think they might be somewhere around the 1% minority as far as specifically haplogroup
Okay,
G.
Copy. I got you. Yeah. So I understand. Okay, keep on going.
So, and this becomes an issue because it raised the question as to what do they do with that? Like, here are their options. Option one, they could insist that, as you know, Israelites who are into DNA, most of them will say Jacob likely had haplogroup E, some subclade of haplogroup E. If he had haplogroup E, that would mean the Teo twins don't descend paternally from Jacob. Their other option was to insist that they do descend paternally from Jacob, but then that would entail basically denying, you know, the logical implication of that. Would
Okay, so let me walk. So I'm trying to walk through everything with everybody. So if they say the Teo twins that they descend paternally from Jacob, which all this, I just want Christians, especially to think about how crazy this whole project is. It's because of an undue, unhealthy, unbiblical emphasis on trying to figure out if you're connected genetically to the patriarchs, okay, because they think it gets them somewhere salvifically and ecclesiastically. So here we go. If they say they descend paternally from Jacob, then that means like 99% of everybody else who would think they're an Israelite doesn't.
Yes, and that's going to come up towards the end of the show. That they ended up flirting with precisely that idea, that maybe the vast majority of the African diaspora doesn't descend paternally from Jacob. They've actually flirted with that idea.
Except for them, okay.
And yeah, they'll deny the entire Israelite spectrum, you know, including most of their 300 some odd Patreons, but before they even, you know, flirt with the idea of denying themselves. But
so they might be one percenters.
So, but one of the things they did, this is going to get reflected a little bit later in the show. Instead of either, you know, choosing themselves or they're one percenters, or, you know, denying themselves, ultimately what they did is they denied the relevance of haplogroups. They treated it as pseudoscience, and they very quietly jettisoned a paternal definition of Israelite. They've adopted this very incoherent model of the autosomal Israelite, where you, rather than focusing on the, you know, the paternal DNA, the DNA that goes along the strict paternal line, they want to focus on all the other lines of descent and somehow, you know, vaguely have a notion of autosomal DNA, which we'll get into.
So basically, your autosomal DNA is like your DNA that just shows other people you're related to, and that could be
basically it's the rest of your DNA. So you have your mtDNA that you get. It's like the strict maternal line. It's your mother's, you know, for centuries going back. Then you have your Y DNA, which is the strict paternal line. It can only be passed from father to son. And then the rest of the DNA is like the admixture that you get from all your various ancestors. So, you know, in your autosomal DNA is where you'll find like the contribution from your mother's father and your father's mother and so on, you know.
So this video is from September of 2020 from Sister E's channel. She's in their circle. And the meme video that we started off in the beginning was where you have the Hebrew of Israel of the Yap game catching the Teo twins using a fate map where they're trying to pass off a haplogroup frequency map for haplogroup J as a map for haplogroup G, so they could put themselves in Levant.
Exactly.
Okay. Why would someone do this? It's so dishonest.
So they would show this map and say, like, look at this. This is haplogroup G. And I guess I could give you an earlier timestamp where they do that. But the main thing is this is the clip we're going to look at is where the Hebrew of Israel, or as I say, Ivri, when Ivri first points out that they have been using the wrong map. He was a gentleman and said the wrong map rather than a fake map. But since they've been so insistent on denying it over the years, now everybody says fake map. Even Sister E at one point, she said, you know, you can come on and have a dialogue on my channel, but don't come on here saying they used the wrong map. You know, it's just, oh man, it's almost cultic. But yeah, so this is a special moment because this is the moment where they were having a debate on Sister E's channel, and you know they're already sensitive about their haplogroup, and he points out that they've been using the wrong map, and it's their reaction that's so funny. This is going to show their reaction.
All right, here we go, ladies and gentlemen. Here is the clip, and this is specifically 1 hour, a minute, 38 seconds in. We're going to play about 3 minutes, and be sure to look for Yakoba's finishing line. You dumb as a doorknob, dude.
So I will say this much. Let's do this. If you say that someone's map is wrong, you have to show definitive proof.
I am. I have. That's why I asked, can you show my screen? Because I have the proof for everyone. This is it. He keeps showing this map, and this is J1. Why are you showing a J1 map for haplogroup B?
Not J1.
Yes, it is. I can push. I can push the article.
I got the link in my video.
Can you show us the link right now?
If that is J1, they changed it.
No, this has always been J1.
No.
I can push the thing.
No, this was G, dude. Don't even play with me.
No, this is not G. This literally says J1.
Well, I got the map.
Everybody in the chat, type in Haplogroup J1
I'm
map.
telling you, I got the reference in the freaking video, dude.
Everybody, Sister E, can you be neutral and type in Haplogroup J map and see if this pops up?
Look,
You can be
even
the neutral one.
if that shows J, that's not what it was. You think I went and made that map, dude? Don't F with me, dude.
I didn't
I'm
say
not
you
the one.
made the map.
I'm not the one.
Dude, I'm trying to be respectful here. Can we like be professional, like you said?
Well, you weren't professional when you were stalking me and trolling me.
Yeah, and you
Yeah,
freaking
I was
accusing me.
not.
You freaking
No.
accusing me of changing stuff, dude. Don't even play with me.
This is the J1 map. Sister E, can you
No,
please
that
just
is
type it
G.
in?
That is G. When I pulled it up, which was about a year ago,
The link is right here.
I don't
It's
care what
literally
you
right
look at.
here.
I'm telling you what I got.
Look, the videos a year ago, it was G. Okay.
No, it wasn't because this.
Yes,
All
it
right,
was.
here, how about this? How about this? We'll
look.
see how old this is.
Just
And we'll-
continue your. Let the guy do his presentation.
Do your damn presentation.
Well, like I don't know why y'all are mad. Like, come on.
Because you bullshitting. That's why.
Not
No,
really.
come on now. Come on now.
So they're getting increasingly angry as
Yeah.
this goes on. He's really calm.
Yeah, Ivry's a real gentleman, and it's funny because the Teo twins act like he's some sort of like vicious attacker, and because they come up with all these excuses for why they can't debate with people, why they can't dialogue with people, even on Facebook. So their excuses are, I'm a Catholic and I'm not an Israelite. Orthodox Muslim, not going to debate with a Muslim. Yeshub, who's the guy who runs the Genesis 49 account, he's rude, and it's like with Ivry, they run out of all their excuses, But
Yeah,
so I don't know. They sort of half allude to like, well, I don't know, maybe he's a white boy. I don't know. They do this kind of thing. Show me your autosomal. They do that kind of stuff.
He's really
But
calm, and
he's in
he's
the
really
chat. Maybe he can confirm whether they blocked him or not.
he's really calm in the face of increasing like vitriol, and he has a quiet confidence. You can tell he knows what he's talking about, and they don't, because their reaction is wow. And I just want, this is important, everybody. Hebrew of Israel, he would describe himself as a Hebrew Israelite. Am I right in that, Abu?
Yes, and although he's definitely one, as many do, he defies whatever I always say,
Right.
whatever stereotype you have of an Israelite, there's many out there
Yeah.
who will not meet that stereotype, and he's definitely very different, very nuanced in his position. So
Yeah.
very interesting guy. I'm hoping maybe one day in the future you might have him on. You have an interesting discussion.
Yeah, we could. I remember he called him once. We talked briefly. I mean,
That was on Debate Talk for You on the hot seat. He had like a few minutes with you.
yeah. Let's continue on and check
Sorry
out
about that.
this. No. I just wanted to comment on what's going on. Let's listen to this clip. As he's showing that they're trying to pass off. This is really bizarre. They're trying to
And by the
pass
way,
off a J
Take a good
map.
look at that map too when it's appear that map that's all red. But go ahead, because then we're going to pull up the image.
Yeah, this is so they can put themselves on the Levant. It would seem to be the consequence of this action. So here we go.
No, look, you started off stalking us on that ladies' channel, and then you came around and you want to
Hey,
be
I'll admit that.
wait. You
probably
want to be
shouldn't have done
PC
that
about it
anyway.
now after picking a fight. So let's just do your presentation.
Yeah, but still, you can't use wrong maps at the same time.
Dude, I'm not using wrong maps. I'm telling you, when I pulled up that map,
J.
Well, look,
listen to
hold
me.
Yeah, but you still can't use wrong maps. Sorry, it's just funny. Notice how they're trying to turn themselves into a victim. So it goes from a discussion of a map to
absolutely.
you're stalking us. Come on, man. Just
But
stick with,
you know what they mean by stalking? He dared to disagree with them publicly and
Yeah.
basically ask them to dialogue with him.
yeah.
That's stalking in their book. That's harassment.
Yeah.
J map right there.
Haplogroup G, whether or not they went and changed it,
All
that's
right.
on them.
Well, yeah.
would
Look,
they-
But I pulled
let me say this. Let me say this.
Map.
Let me
Let's
say
look.
this. Let me say this.
Where?
I was there when we did the video, and it was G a year ago or so. Okay, so I
How
was a
was G,
witness.
man?
Now you don't have to believe me. I was a
Yeah.
witness. So you can go look at the video. The video a year old. You think he just made that up?
Haplogroup G a year ago. There's nothing.
What? I'm telling you in our video.
dumb as
Okay.
a doorknob, dude. You dumb as a
Or-
doorknob.
wait, hold on. Make your presentation or
Yeah, we can
or
pause
not.
that.
All right, I'll
And
finish my
as
presentation.
you make your presentation, address my question, because that's where we were.
Yes, sir. I will. I'm going back to the presentation.
We can pause it here.
But can y'all relax a little bit? Like you can disagree with what I'm saying, but you don't gotta.
Don't
Well,
call me a liar, okay?
Well,
Don't
I
call
never-
me a liar. That's the problem.
that's the
I
problem.
never
I'm not
said you were
playing
lying, but I did say you used the wrong map, and I had evidence for
I
it.
did not use the wrong map, and I have
No, you
evidence
thought
that
that
it
was-
was.
Hold on.
Don't F with me, bro.
Hold on. Look, regardless, he told you what it was at the time, and you can go look in the video. It's not like he pulled this up today.
Even in that
hold
time,
on. It was in his video at that time, and he made the presentation. Now, are you going to present your case or not? And I want you to address my stuff. And the reason, look, you telling everybody.
Do you think that's far enough?
Yeah, that's far enough. That's what I was trying to say. Yeah, definitely. So in the notes I sent, I give the link to the image that they showed.
Yeah, I got.
So to put this in context, or at least in a sort of temporal context,
I'm
that
bringing up
discussion
on
was
it's on
happening in
the. I'm
2020.
bringing up on the screen right now.
Exactly. So this is the map they showed. They said this is the map of Haplogroup G. And the funniest thing is in their presentation, all they did was show the image and they put a letter G off to the left to that. And then when it was pointed out that they're using the wrong map, they were like, yeah, you think I'm some sort of sophisticated graphic artist that I could make something up like that? It's like, no, you didn't make anything up. You just put the letter G next to it. That's all you did. But anyway, if you look
hold
on
on,
that-
hold on. The date for this is 20. So on Wiki Images, you know the comment where they have this the PNG file is from August 10th, 2014.
Exactly. And that discussion was happening in 2020. They were trying to claim it was changed on them.
Yeah,
that in
but it's-
2019 it was Haplogroup G, and some sinister force out there, maybe the Jesuits, maybe the Freemasons, changed Wikipedia, to change the map, to embarrass the innocent Teo twins.
Are you serious? That's what they really said?
Yeah, that's what they were insinuating. Well, they were saying that even in that clip, they were saying that. They were like, well, maybe somebody went back and changed it. If somebody changed it, that's on them. But, they were trying to say, like, trust me, I was there. It said G when we took it,
But I want to look. This is the image they used. So this is for J. And explain someone who hasn't seen a haplogroup map like this, what it represents. Like what is a person looking at when they see this? Because they need to understand how this is relevant and why a person would try to toy around with it.
So it represents the frequency of this haplogroup in different regions. So in this particular map, the darker the color, the more, the higher the percentage of the populace in that area has this haplogroup. So in like areas where it's white, should consider it almost non-existent, right? Mm-hmm. But in areas where, where it slowly gets darker, there's a lot. And you'll notice in the Levant, it's, between 30 to 60% and possibly even over 60%, in certain parts. Those are those darkest spots where haplogroup J is found. Yeah, and so they were trying to pass this off as G and saying, look, this shows that G is in the Middle East, which is strange because later on they would go on to deny that the Holy Land was actually there. Now they claim the Holy Land is somewhere in Ethiopia.
Yeah, wait, that doesn't make sense if they think that that Israel is actually somewhere in Africa.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. They try to... I'm not sure if they were holding that position back then. Now they try to use that to their advantage. They try to say, well, why would we even show the map if, being that we don't even think that's the Holy Land? They do this weird convoluted logic, but they do it from behind the block wall. So you can't ask them for clarification or anything like that, I know it's a bit of a headache. Huh?
Yeah, these guys, man, everyone be men. Not Sister E, she doesn't have to be a man, but everyone else be a man. Okay.
Alton Johnson in the chat, he quoted Berean as, at this point, this is where Berean would go, ah.
Oh, is that so? That's a Berean reference. I got you, bro. Okay. Yeah. It's funny that you caught that.
Then he usually sucks his teeth out. He goes, ah. He'd be like, oh, there's a lot going on.
Oh, no, I'll. Okay. Okay, so, wow, this is, so, I mean, is there any other explanation to give other than they were trying to deceive people? Is there another explanation you give?
I'd say it's a little bit of both. Here's the most charitable thing we could say, that initially they got it wrong. I could see a situation where maybe they're downloading maps from different sources and they're putting together a PowerPoint really quickly, and they downloaded the wrong image, and maybe it was an innocent mistake at the beginning. But since then, they've spent 2 years doubling down on this claim that they didn't use the wrong map. Somebody went back and changed the whole internet, And so and then the thing that really stands out for me is they are very quick to call people liars.
Yeah, but they're really upset. if they think someone's calling them a liar, but he wasn't calling them a liar. He just said you have the wrong map.
Exactly. Since then, because they've been so nasty, the tone has changed over the years to, all right, it was a fake map. Because they've been so insistent that maybe someone changed the internet rather than them being wrong. And then on top of that, I don't know, their lack of charity sort of invites the temptation to not use the most charitable explanation, And then on top of that, for the other Teo twin to say, oh, I was there, one thing that I've said for a while now is they're not even reliable witnesses to what's happening in the midst of their own research.
That's kind of a funny. Yeah, that's a funny comment, dude.
Okay, so I guess we're gonna.
It's really sad because these guys are popular, man.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. People they are very popular. They have a popular channel. People used to recommend them. But what I've noticed is that once you start looking at their arguments, a lot of their arguments are really shoddy and with all due respect to them, really weak. And when you try to dialogue with them on the nuances of their arguments, they get upset very, very quickly.
Oh, yeah.
And here's another example. So you're pulling up, this is a video of theirs called The Promised Land Hasn't Been Found.
Yeah, because this is where we're supposed to go next. And it does relate. We were just talking about how these guys believe that the true Promised Land, as they would call it, is not in the Levant area, but somewhere on the continent of Africa. So now we're talking about something else. All right, I got the video up.
Yes.
Give us the context.
Here's the common theme here. Here's the common theme. As I like to say, the Teo twins don't have the best relationship with maps. So they had that haplogroup frequency map. They used the wrong map, or some like to say they used a fake map. And now what they're going to be doing here is they're going to show a map of Palestine, of what's known as the land of Israel, and they're going to now, as you see it on their screen right there. You notice that map, the coastline is horizontal. You can see that, right? And so they were arguing. This won't exactly be very clear here, but they were arguing that that's actually a map of the sort of southern coast of West Africa. The western part of the continent of Africa protrudes outward. So that's like the southern coast, just above the coast of Guinea. And they were saying this map of like where the tribes were. This is a map from the 16th century or 17th century. It's called the Avraham Bar Yaakov map. And they were arguing that this map is actually a map of Africa and you'll hear him say, this doesn't look anything like the Levant, or he says the Middle East, because it goes on a slant. And what he means is that when you look at a map of Israel, it goes, it's vertical, not horizontal. The coast is vertical and slanted off slightly to the side, slightly to the right. And so what we'll do is we'll show the clip, and then we'll show how badly he, his inability to orient this map, or just read it and then orient it.
All right, here we go.
Okay, this is the Abraham Bar Jacob, or the Hadaga map. So in the past, Hebrew geographical maps were relatively rare, but they all showed the land of Israel as a separate entity. So take note of that. They all show the land of Israel as a separate entity, stressing the sanctity and uniqueness of the country of Judaism. Abraham Bar Jacob, a convert to Judaism, drew a map of the Holy Land following that of Christian Adrocom, 1588, incorporating many Jewish elements such as the route of the Exodus from Egypt to Canaan and the designation of territories of the 12 tribes of Israel. The map was reproduced in a Passover Haggadah as one of the earliest Hebrew printed maps. So look at this map, family. What does that remind you of? Does that remind you of the modern area we call Israel? Does that remind you of the modern area called Jerusalem? Look at the ocean. Look at the ship in the ocean right there. Does that remind you of the modern area in the Middle East, or does it remind you of Negro land? Now remember, at the top, what did he say? He says, but they all showed the land of Israel as what? A separate entity. So they showed the land, let's assume this is Negro land. They showed Negro land as a separate entity. This is the case I'm making, all right? So I'm gonna continue.
Abu, do you want to stop there?
No, I'd say keep going. Keep going.
Okay.
He's about to show the clearer version of the map, and then we'll show mine.
Abu,
I know it's a little...
what if I told you that I'm actually a little confused about what exact argument he's making? I think he's trying to say that this older map does not show Israel, but some other place.
Yeah. So what he's looking at is a map. It's a map that shows where it was made by a Jew in the 17th century, and it's a map that shows where it's assumed the tribes of Israel were. And he was saying that map doesn't look anything like the land that we understand to be Israel today. Rather, when he says Negro land, he's referring to a place in West Africa, roughly around the area of Guinea and stuff like that, So, and you'll notice the southern coast of West Africa runs horizontally on a typical map. And that's what he was alluding to. When he says Negro land, he means a place in West Africa. Bilad al-Sudan, I think it's called in certain maps. So that's where the name comes from. But and so that's what he's alluding to, that this is actually a map. This map that shows where the tribes of Israel were is actually a map of West Africa, not of the land we currently call Israel. And so this was sort of supposed to be evidence of where the true Israel is. Oh, and by the way, let me just say shout out to Alton Johnson, because he was the first person to sort of refute them on this.
Oh, okay. Right on, bro. So what it is, everybody, is, again, we're dealing with a popular Hebrew Israelite channel, TEO, TEOTW, the End of the World Ministries. Two twins run it, and they're affiliated with a number of sometimes what people call moderate Hebrew Israelites. I don't really use that term too much anymore, and they have different kinds of theories than if you're only, say, accustomed to dealing with One West. They have different theories, and one of them that these guys have that is shared. I just talked to Aaron last night on the smoke room. One of them is that the place that we refer to Israel in the 21st century right now is not actually where the biblical Israel is, but the biblical Israel is actually basically West Africa or somewhere. Some people put it in Ethiopia, some people put it in South Africa. And so the first subject had to do with genetics. Now we're dealing with geography. Obviously, though, the two sometimes intertwine in these discussions. And so
in this case, they show their poor relationship with maps.
Yeah. So, all right, continue on with the clip here. All right, where's a little bit of dead air there?
All right, so hold on, let me get this right.
So smaller here, get out of the way.
All right, so once again, this is the original map. It's the same as the color one, and you can see these Hebrew writings on it, right? Once again, this territory here does not look like the Middle East, right? Remember, the Middle East goes on a slant. It's on a diagonal, right? Now.
All right, that's where you want to stop, Abu? Break it down.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. So you get the point. The general gist of it is, if you looked at a map of West Africa, you see that coast there. And when he said the map, it goes on a diagonal, what he was referring to is that if you pull up Israel on a map, the land of Israel or Palestine, on a typical map, the coast is vertical. It slants slightly to the right, but it's vertical. This coast here on this map is clearly horizontal, right? That's obvious, right? So his argument is basically that can't be the land that people understand to be Israel today, because you know which way the coast goes on a map of Israel. This is a completely different map. He's proposing, when he says Negro land, he means it's a part of West Africa, right? And now, if we could jump, I have a video, and Alton Johnson's done this as well. You'll notice there's a little there at the bottom of the page.
Oh, wait, I thought we were going to the next video.
Yes.
Okay.
So this is where I explain this compass. You notice right there at the bottom left, it says there's some Hebrew words there. I explain these Hebrew words, and you'll notice there's an ornate point on the compass. So this allows us to, the thing that they failed to do was orient the map to figure out which way is north. And that's the gist.
So I'm gonna play a clip from your video called Teo's Cartography.
Yes.
Okay, so here we go, everybody. Let me get this here. I'm gonna actually just let this be And I'm having trouble. It's like making it. Okay, let me just play this.
Are first, that this map has the coast running horizontally rather than vertically. And second, they have to deal with the personification of Africa, which appears on that map. And it's at this point that I want to zero in on what Alton Johnson mentioned about an hour into his video when he was reading an email from a scholar, and that is the compass on the map. So notice how there's these Hebrew words that appear on the different points of the compass. See, those words allow one to orient themselves towards a particular direction. So going counterclockwise, we'll start at the top left, where we find the word Mizrach, which means east. Then, below that, at the bottom left, we have the word Tzafon, which means north. And notice the fleur de lis, the little flower, the lily flower, that makes it look a bit like the head of a spear. Then, to the right of that, at the bottom right of the compass, we have the word Ma'arab, which means west. And finally, above that, at the top right, we have the word Darom, which means south. But let's focus on the point for north, right? Tzafon. The point where the little lily flower, the fleur de lis, is, right? The Teo twins noted, again, as I've mentioned several times, they had noted that the coast of Palestine would be on a vertical slant, unlike what we find in this map. But the coast of Palestine is on a vertical slant on maps which have the north at the top of the map. So in order to orient this map to what is now popular in modern maps, we would have to have that little flower, or the northern point of the compass, pointing upwards. Now, in my opinion, the best way to illustrate this would be with a physical copy of the map. And that's what we have here, a printout of Abraham Bar Jacob's map. Now, note how the coast, again, I've said this many times, so forgive me if it's getting a little redundant, but notice how the coast is running horizontally, which the Teo twins unwittingly and tacitly interpreted as meaning that it's running from east to west, like the southern coast of West Africa. It is here that we need to note the compass at the bottom of the map. So I'm going to zoom in to the compass, and I'm going to let my camera focus on it a bit. And here we have the word Tzafon, which again means north, and the little lily flower, the fleur de lis, which sort of looks like a spearhead, right? In order to orient this map in such a way where the north is pointing upwards, we are going to have to rotate the map. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to rotate this map such that the northern point of the compass is pointing upwards. And there you go. And now that we have done that, we can now zoom back out to see how the coast of the Holy Land is oriented. And would you look at that? Now the coast of this landmass is on a diagonal slant. With the compass in mind, we learn that coast actually runs south to north, or more specifically, more accurately, southwest to northeast. But, while that might deal with the Teo twins' question about, the orientation, being on a slant, vertical versus horizontal, even though they didn't use those words explicitly.
Abu, you want to stop right there?
Yeah, we can stop here.
Honestly, Abu, after this video and the other one, just in the first two that we've shown, I really think what credibility they had, even with their audience who's really into this, I really think it's going to be damaged. I don't think these are not the kind of mistakes you recover from unless you really do radical course correction and really come out front and deal with it and talk about it. The one where you've got the wrong, you're switching different haplogroup maps and you're blaming conspiracies on the internet for the error, and this one where you're not noticing the orientation arrows and you're looking at it wrong and trying to draw these conclusions. These are these aren't small. These are huge, especially when they're fundamental to your case you're trying to make.
Yeah. And what they do is they block people. They tell their echo chamber, basically, they try to poison their echo chamber against any critic. Not just me, but so too Orthodox Moors, so too the rest of the Yap Gang. And they do this thing where they engage in this emotional manipulation where they tell their audience that these disagreements with them are attacks on the entire Israelite spectrum. Yeah. In the past, they've literally written that even the Yap Gang, which is, essentially a group of gentlemen who identify as Israelites, they've treated even them. They'll say that things like they're joining up with the Catholics and that they're I remember one of the things they said that that it shows that they still have white supremacy in their heart, that they want to attack Israel. Like insane stuff like that. But the whole theme is disagreement with the Teo twins is an attack on the entire Israelite community. That's the gist.
Well, then why? If that's the case, why are they? Hold on. If that's the case, why are they allowed to call, the Hebrew of Israel, the lion who was the coward? If that's okay for them to do, and that's not what he's doing to them. We're just pointing out errors. It's just really hypocritical and a double standard there.
Oh, absolutely, and it's a one-way street in terms of the. It's not that an attack on any Israelite is an attack on the whole Israelite spectrum. It's specifically disagreement with them and Kelly Richardson and Will Brown. These are the sacred cows within their little subset, and I'm sorry to say, I think they have successfully poisoned the mind of some in the people they allow inside their bubble. The people who trust them and are sort of conditioned to not trust anything outside the bubble.
Yeah, but the Richard Katz thing, and now with this, and honestly, I would say, you're not saying this, I am. 2019 with Dante Fortune, and Sister E's involvement in almost all of this, that circle, as popular it is got some severe credibility problems. Honestly, I don't think there's any way around it. I mean, you can't trust what's being put out there at all. Okay.
And so we make a transition, much like with the previous map, where we make a transition from like what could have been an innocent mistake to outright deception, where like with the haplogroup map, it started out where it's possible they just made a mistake, but rather than own up to that, they pushed this idea that the entire internet was changed, and maybe the Lion of Israel, or excuse me, the Hebrew of Israel is maybe he's a white guy, or they've even said that they've even insinuated that the Yap Gang members are they call them quote unquote pronouns to sort of take a jab at their let's say their orientation. They've gone for anything they could to try to escape just focusing on arguments.
Wait, you mean they call people in the Yap Gang, they actually use the word pronouns? They call them pronouns?
The pronoun gang. They would say that. We don't, because there's even a young lady amongst them, and they started calling her a quote unquote white girl, and then they started saying to her, well, we don't even know if she's a girl. She might be one of the pronouns, and they've sort of done this thing, to insinuate that this young lady, who's a very young lady, she's in her early 20s apparently, and these guys are like in their 50s or something like that.
Wait, the Teo twins? Hold on, the Teo twins are in their 50s?
Yeah, that's my understanding. Even though their behavior is much younger. It's much more youthful, juvenile, I might say. But to be polite, we'll say it's much more youthful.
I never would have guessed I would have thought they were very
based
young.
on how sophomoric they are. Yeah,
I would have imagined they were very young men in their late 20s. This is all very eye-opening, and I want to reiterate to the live chat. These are very, very popular online. I mean, they call themselves some ministries. It's called Teo Ministries. They're very popular, very influential. Not just them, but the people in their circle. There's a circle there, and it's active, and there's a lot of momentum. This is wild. Okay, so I'm on the next thing here. This is undeniable proof that Africa is the Holy Land. That's the title of this video from August 12th, 2022. So this is pretty recent here.
So what this was sort of a response to Alton Johnson, and I guess indirectly to me, and they revisit the subject, right? But they don't actually address any of the arguments, but they sort of indirectly address this issue. And what they do is they find another map that looks similar, right? And
what?
But there's a bit of a game being played there, and so they don't address any of the arguments, but they sort of try to indirectly address it in this clip. And the one thing I want you to notice, that as you're looking at this, the compass is there at the bottom left of the map they have on the screen, but notice it's cut off. Like you can't see the ornate point that tells you which way is north. and it makes you wonder, was that a mistake? Because like I said, with the haplogroup map controversy, they went from what could have been an innocent mistake to outright deception, and I think that's what's happened here. It could have been that they just didn't understand how to read that first map. But now it seems like they're engaging in deliberate deception.
So everyone listen. So they're revisiting this. So clearly they have egg on their face. Hey, someone's saying that we should call that group, like Teo Twins and all of them, the Map Gang.
That's right. The counterweight to the Yap Gang is the Map Gang.
Map Gang. The Map Gang. Oh man, dude. Oh man, that's pretty good. Yeah, shout out to the live chat. Okay, so they're revisiting this controversy. They should have left well enough alone, honestly. But when they do, they're going to show a similar image of Holy Land from David Rumsey Map Center. And in this, notice everyone, the compass orientation is cut off. But don't worry, we're going to show the original map here. But let me play the video.
Image of the Holy Land from the David Rumsey Map Center. All right, see this map here? This is from the David Rumsey Map Center. It says the kingdom of the Jews divided into the sons of Herod the Great by the tetrarchy at the time of Christ the Lord. Who is the creator? The creator is Johnson. His name is Johnson.
Doesn't it say Jansen?
And it represents the tribes of Reuben, Gad, the eastern parts of the tribes of Benjamin, Ephraim, Demi, Manasseh within Jordan, the western parts of the tribes of Ephraim, Benjamin, and half of Manasseh within Jordan, and the northern parts of Dan and Judah, the tribes of Asher, the western part of the tribes of Zebulun and Issachar, half the tribe of Manasseh beyond the Jordan, and the tribe of Naphtali, and the eastern parts of the tribes of Zebulun and Issachar, the greatest part of the tribe of Evida towards the east.
You're saying cut it off there?
Yeah, you can pause it here. The point is that there's no substance to it, so you're not going to hear any sort of argument. They don't actually respond to what they're sort of pretending they respond to. But the significant point is they found another map. And this map looks very similar to the Abraham Bar Yaakov map. So they're trying to say, but look, we found another map like that. But the compass is cut off. And now it begs the question, is that a mistake? Is that a mistake? So we have the fuller map, if you could show that.
Yeah, because if they're grabbing it, they would have had to have seen it, so they would have known.
Yeah, how convenient that they if they accidentally cut it off. That's quite the convenient accident. They cut off specifically the fleur de lis. Well, let's look at the fuller map, see if there is a fleur de lis on it. But you notice how the bottom of that compass is cut off, so we can't tell which way is north.
You talking about? I'm trying to put it on the screen right now. It's taking.
Yeah, what they had on the screen. Yeah, when we pull up the fuller map, and this is courtesy of Wikipedia, you know.
Yeah, I see. It's a huge file. It's gonna.
Oh, very big. But there you go. So that bottom middle panel is the panel they were looking at.
So you're talking about right here?
Yeah.
The bottom middle panel. Okay, I see. Yeah, and they cut it off so you can't see. What's the fancy name for that again?
Fleur de lis. It literally means flower of lily, the lily flower.
Okay.
But it's sort of, it looks to
right
me
here.
It looks more like spikes on a fence or something like that. Some of these metal fences that people have.
Yeah.
Or to me it looks almost like the old school European spear or lance.
Yeah, like the New Orleans Saints football helmet logo.
Exactly.
Thing.
That's literally the fleur de lis. Yeah.
Oh.
So you see which way that is. So that's which way is north. So and now we're not going to actually rotate the image, but the point is that now that we can see the full compass, if we were to rotate this so that the little fleur de lis pointed upwards, once again, this coast would match the orientation of the other map.
Yeah, it'd be the same thing all over again.
Yeah, it'd be the same thing all over again. And not only did they not address it, but they literally cut off the point that helps you orient the map. They cut it off.
But how could they think people aren't going to see that, especially after that's what they got caught for?
Well, apparently, the main thing is they have trusted fans, the people they allow within the bubble, a significant percentage of them have been emotionally manipulated into not considering the other side's arguments. This is something I've discussed with certain people because, with the cats thing, a lot of things, people would ask, well, how is it that some of their fans don't get this? How they don't see it? And what I always say is, you can't convince a person with an argument that they refuse to even consider. Yeah. So, you could make a video on a subject, but if I refuse to watch it, how is it ever going to influence me? And they go out of their way to emotionally manipulate their audience. And they convince them that everyone who disagrees with them hates their audience. That's what this is about. Like Kelly Richardson has said that explicitly. Like on the cats thing, he said, this isn't an attack on me. This is an attack on all of you. He would look into the screen and say that, and they've applied that to everybody, not to me, to you. Now they apply it to the Yap Gang, so they're attacking all of Israel,
Yeah,
and they're secretly white and they're and their quote unquote pronouns, as they like to call them, and just all this nasty stuff.
I
It's all
never-
about
I didn't realize
insults,
they're-
poisoning the well, and avoiding the actual arguments.
Yeah, I didn't realize that the Teo twins insults were so juvenile.
Juvenile?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I didn't.
juvenile.
I didn't. So I'm not. So listen, everyone. I've explained several times why this is important to cover. So I've never tried to minimize their significance. I don't do that. I don't do the whole "you're not important, you're not significant" with people that I'm interacting with or channels, no matter the size. And you just won't hear me really doing that kind of thing, So same thing. Same thing with this here. Is I'm not doing that. However, I'm not able to follow everything with equally close, and so I'm not as aware of all the ins and outs of the Teo twins, the end of the world ministries, and that set of Hebrew Israelites over there. I'm not as aware. Abu is much more aware. Alton Johnson, shout out to that brother. He's much more aware. There's a number of brothers and sisters who are a lot more in keeping track of everything and doing a great job over there. And so that's why I'm trying to bring this to the forefront. But I'm learning as I go as well. And
with Alton Johnson, they never addressed his arguments as well. You know what they did? They have a video where one of them just repeatedly, it's so childish, just over and over and over again, they keep calling him a beta male. Saying, I'm sick of these beta males. Literally, it's childish, but that's literally what they do with Alton Johnson. And it was hilarious because I remember Orthodox Moore went on Alton Johnson's channel, and in reference to that, he goes, Alton, I just want to thank you for the alpha male scholarship. It's such a great line. But anyway, we're going to move on from their problems with cartography to their problems with genetics, and this is going to circle back to their inconvenient haplogroup.
That is a good line, and I met Alton. Alton's not like some tiny little dude. First of all, second of all, he's got a large family, and I don't think you'd want to. I don't think they would be too interested in hearing someone say that about him. And also, he knows how to cook. Man, he hooked up everything. And this man made some of the hottest jerk chicken I've ever had. I don't even know if you're supposed to make it as hot as you, because I've had the jerk chicken I've had is by Jamaican restaurants in Florida and a guy here in Phoenix and stuff like that. But Alton's, man, is woo, but it's so good you just want to keep on eating. And he's got a good family. Shout out, his wife's super cool, just great people over there. And it's just a silly slur. It's not true. And he's just a down guy. He's a good guy. And why do we have to go here with this? Why can't we just talk about the maps? But all right,
because they're desperate to avoid the actual arguments. But yeah,
on to the DNA section.
Yes.
Okay.
So the first subsection, we're going to get into their confusion about Lemba DNA, and I think this is going to sort of be our longest and most detailed portion of this discussion, and then after that, it's going to tail off with just some minor stuff.
All right, so I'm going to show an image here.
Some post they put on Facebook. It was a comment in one of my threads before they blocked me.
Who blocks a boo? Why would you?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and you know what they blocked me for, basically, for questioning them in a debate forum. They're in a debate forum that the Rumble Room, it's called, on Facebook.
Yeah.
Which is a bit of a freewheeling place. And because I dared to question them, and they started to pull this thing like, why is he even here? Why? It's a debate forum. But they said, questioning them in there is harassment. And so they blocked me for that.
It's harassment.
Yeah. And I want to point out, by the way, that they had said, so they blocked me for questioning them on their DNA model. I want to note, we could show it. I could send you the link or something like that. But there was a declaration that went out before I took a look at their DNA model, which said that the entire quote unquote UA, whatever that means, it's whatever that means in the minds of the different people who throw that around as like a reference to the boogeyman.
By the way, everyone, UA is what they call
urban
urban apologetics community, and the people who use it, they use it almost as a slur. It's weird, but go ahead.
And so it was declared that the entire UA is too. This is an exact quote, quote unquote, too shook. Too scared, in other words, to look at the Teo twins DNA model. That this is one of many subjects that they've thrown challenges out there. That people are scared to look at their model, and so I started, and they blocked me for looking at their model.
So when you actually challenge it, they throw a fit, basically.
Yes. So now, just to give one of the reasons I wanted to show this is because another thing they do in these discussions on DNA, they say it about me, and they say it about the Yap Gang, and they say it about a lot of different people who have different positions. Anyone who disagrees with them, they say that those people are all ignorant. They've never read anything on DNA. They don't know the subject. Unlike them, like they'll say that they know how to read the data and they've actually taken the time to study it. And they're basically, the implications, they're the only ones who know it. So I wanted to show a couple of things that highlight how they have, I myself am just an amateur. So if anyone says, Abu Hamid is just an amateur when it comes to DNA, they'd be right. I am just an amateur. But man, the Teo twins are, even the basics, they really struggle with, and this is one of these examples. So like this was a comment they sent to me just before they blocked me. And the highlighted portion captures, there's a lot to unpack there, but it captures the problem with their understanding of the subject. It shows how shallow their understanding is.
So once again, you all make too many assumptions. This is addressed to you, of course. So this is Yakoba, one of the twins, addressing Abu. Did you not see how they determined a valid haplogroup? Did you not understand that you can have the same haplogroup and not be related? How can I have a haplogroup of G and still be related autosomally to Limba? Wait, even I understand that that's wrong. Haplogroups and autosomes should align. Haplogroups are really only good for migration patterns, if that. Some of the samples taken for sample haplogroups in Africa are as low as 4 people. Some tribes in Africa have not been tested. There are black Moroccan Jews with haplogroup G. Like I stated, it is all BS. Well, then why are they trying to use it anyway? But all right, show us all the problems with this, because even I was able to see a few.
Yes. So to unpack it's really the highlighted portion is the most egregious, right? Yeah. Is that how can I have a haplogroup G and still be related autosomally to Lemba, right? There's 3 points to bring out there, right? The first point is, of course, the Lemba themselves don't have just one haplogroup. They have a myriad of haplogroups. There's J carriers and E carriers, and even amongst them, some of them are J1, some of them are J2, some of the E carriers are E1B1A, some of them are E1B1B, and then if I'm not mistaken, there's also T carriers and a small number of R carriers amongst them. The Lemba, sort of like mainstream Jewish groups, are patrilineally diverse. There's a number of paternal lines
real quick.
Amongst the Lemba.
So a few people, there's a lot of detail in these conversations. The Lemba, everyone, it's a group of people in South Africa and Zimbabwe that had some oral history and also some practices that looked that had them migrating from a land far away, perhaps the Levant specifically, and some customs and practices that looked Jewish. And so after some genetic testing, especially I believe the Buba clan of the Limba, which is like the male priestly clan, if I'm getting my words right here.
Yep, you're correct.
Had DNA that appeared to originate back to the Levant, meaning Semitic DNA. But you're making the point that remember, first of all, it's some, and so that kind of would help prove the point to what you're saying. The Limba are not just one haplogroup. So
right. So the mainstream excitement about the Lemba was the fact that their oral traditions seemed to find some corroboration, right? And then one of the issues that excited a lot of people is some of the Lemba had paternal markers that line up with paternal markers found amongst mainstream Jews, mainstream Jewish Kohens in particular, right? And so one of the things that really stood out.
Okay, and everyone, Cohens are folks that appear to descend from Aaron, the priestly clan, and they have I think it's 4 little unique signatures that are kind of studied as kind of a cluster of unique things, and they'll say the Cohen. Is that right? Isn't it 4 unique? Oh.
Something like, there's a number of markers that go together, that cluster together, and so what it seems like is that amongst some of the Lemba and amongst some mainstream Jews, right, they may have a common paternal ancestor who lived about 3,000 years ago.
So, right? Short version, you could have some Ashkenazim, some Sephardim who are related to Lemba and vice versa.
Paternally, yeah. And so what the Teo twins failed to understand, they never fully understood that. All they understood, the way they would oversimplify it is, even the Ish people say that the Lemba are Israelites, right? Which is
by the way, Ish is slur for Jewish people, is what they're saying.
Yes, precisely. They'd say that. So basically they're saying even the mainstream Jews have recognized the Lemba, but they don't understand what's going on there. What it really is, it's not just an excitement about the Lemba in general, it's an excitement about the Lemba paternal lines, some paternal lines found amongst the patrilineally diverse Lemba. That's number one. And so they do this thing. So then they try to insinuate in that highlighted portion that they can't have haplogroup G. Maybe it's a mistake. That's what they're insinuating, because they themselves are allegedly autosomally related to the lemba. This is what they claim. What they don't understand is that you could have any autosomal DNA, irrespective of your haplogroup, right? But more importantly, there isn't one distinct lemba haplogroup, right? The lemba themselves are patrilineally diverse. There's a bunch of different paternal haplogroups, meaning there's a bunch of different paternal lines amongst the lemba, right? That's a point to keep in mind. And beyond that, right, there's this question of when they say that they're related autosomally to the lemba, what they mean there is that they got lemba in GEDmatch Oracle. There's a lot of excitement amongst that crowd, especially the Teo twins and to a lesser extent Sister E. There's a lot of excitement about GEDmatch Oracle. It's not even GEDmatch proper. It's Oracle, which is like the next step down, right? When you're using GEDmatch, there's like this fun tool called Oracle, right? And so if you could pull up that link I sent, the dataminingdna.com.
Yes, I got it right here. I'm pulling it up, and I'm going to show it on the screen.
So what we're
here.
going to show here is a discussion on Oracle, because if for anyone who's interested, you can see a discussion that I had with the Teo twins on Berean's channel. It's a show called What We Have Received DNA, or you could just see my own video on GEDmatch Oracle. But we're going to go through very quickly some of the relevant points. If you could scroll down, there's a section which reads, it's going to be in large letters, what is GEDmatch Oracle? It's about maybe a fifth of the way down. Or you could, I don't know, it's number 2 in that table of contents. Yeah, so it's be right after this section. There it is, right there. Yeah, just went past it. Go up slightly. Go back up, yeah. A little bit. There you go, right there, right there. You're there. So, you'll notice it says, what is GEDmatch Oracle? This is explaining the Oracle tool. And that second paragraph is what's important here, right? Because they're getting excited about the fact that they used Oracle and they got hits for lemba in Oracle. Oracle came up in a list of hits. And so they're using that to say, well, that means I'm autosomally related to the lemba, right? So if I can, I just want to read that second paragraph, right? It says, maybe you could highlight it. It says, it's important to understand that Oracle isn't measuring shared... Oh, sorry.
Hold on. I just... Oh,
no
my
problem.
bad. I was trying to reply to a comment, but it made it mess up. My bad. Okay,
it's
sorry
okay. I
about
still
that.
have the text.
Okay.
You want to highlight
which part?
The second paragraph where it says it's important to understand.
Okay.
Yes.
Sorry. I was trying to respond to a comment, but I forgot. Problem. It's going to take me off.
This one says, if I could read this, it's important to understand that Oracle isn't measuring shared DNA between your kit and the reference samples. I want to repeat that. Oracle is not measuring shared DNA between your kit and the reference samples. It's calculating how closely the breakdown of your ethnicity percentages match the breakdown of a reference population across the same categories. And now I want to explain what that means, if I can. So if you could you pull up the image that's titled GEDmatch-Dodicad-Africa 9?
Yeah, give me a second, though. It'll take a second.
No problem. Take your time.
Can you explain real quick to people what GEDmatch is, though? Because everyone doesn't necessarily...
GEDmatch is a website where you can, if you got tested with another company, it's basically GEDmatch is one of many companies that examines DNA. And let's say if you took a test with, there's multiple companies that you can do this with, but if you did a test with 23andMe, for example, you can then send your raw data from 23andMe to GEDmatch, and they'll run your DNA against different samples that they have within different calculators. So different quote-unquote calculators have different sets of samples that they compare you to, right? Now, there's 3 things to see here, right? So these are my results in specifically the Dodicad-Africa 9 calculator, right? And again, different calculators compare your DNA to different samples, and some calculators are more limited, some are more expansive, right? So what's relevant here is there's 3 things relevant. You'll see at the top of the screen, I don't know if they can see it, it says spreadsheet. Let me see. I'm going to look on the...
I can see the word where it says spreadsheet. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, spreadsheet. Yeah, I see it. Okay, so at the top of the screen, it says spreadsheet. That's a button that if you're in GEDmatch, you can click on that and you'll get a spreadsheet, which will give you the data of the reference populations that this particular calculator uses. Then underneath that, you have this table where it says population, Europe, Northwest Africa, Southwest Asia, East Africa, etc. Right? These are my results in this particular calculator where it says I'm like 62% European, 5% Northwest African, 27% Southwest Asian, etc. Right? So here's what's relevant. So the what's in that table, these are what that text was referring to as your ethnicity percentages or the categories, right? When someone checks the spreadsheet, they see all these other reference populations like Ethiopian Jews, Italians, or more specifically, it might say Sicilians, Tuscans, Northern Italians, North Africans, Moroccans, etc. It has a whole bunch of populations, and it shows how they scored in those same categories. Now, what excites the Teo twins is there's a button underneath the table that says Oracle, and when you click on that, you get compared to these populations, and they think it means that if a population appears in their results, it means you're related to that population. That's what they wrongly think, even though we just read.
But it's not showing.
It's not measuring shared DNA.
It's not showing people it's not showing that. Okay.
Right. It's not saying you're related to those populations. Not at all. Right. So now if we could show the next image, is the image titled Oracle Dodecad Africa 9. This is what happens. So again, these are my results in specifically Dodecad Africa 9. And what happens is if we click that.
Putting himself out there.
Yep. So this is what happened. If you click the Oracle results, you get this, what you find here. Right. And you'll notice that at the top, right, of the top of my results in specifically Oracle for Dodecad Africa 9, I have Tuscan. And then underneath that, I have North Italian. Now, here's something that stands out, right? I don't have any actual Italian ancestry. Now, I love Italian culture, Italian food, the Italian language, so I would love to be able to claim it, but I don't. Now, being that I got hits for Italian in Oracle, not GEDmatch proper, but Oracle, does not give me the right to claim that I'm Italian, right? But it does beg the question then, what is going on here? Good, you were going to say something?
No, yeah, I just said you wish.
Yeah, I wish. I'm not cool like Vocab, but I wish I was. And so let's say if I wanted to play the same game that they play, where they say, look, I got Lemba, therefore in Oracle, therefore I must be related to the Lemba. Let's say if I wanted to be Tuscan, I wanted to be Northern Italian, I could say, oh, look, I got Tuscan, I got Northern Italian.
Yeah, but, like I'm almost 22%.
Something like that, right. So what the distances there are, you notice there's a column on the right that says distance, and the numbers get higher. Yeah. The lower the distance means the closer you are to that reference population. But it's a mathematical formula. All it means is that when you go into the spreadsheet, you can see how they scored on those reference populations. Remember, we saw those reference populations that said like European, North African, Southwest Asian, right? So their samples are also measured on those reference populations, and your distance is based on how close your references are to them. So if we could, wanted to pull up the next image, which is spreadsheet Dodecad comparison.
All right, just give me a second. I got that.
Take your time. So what this is going to do, it's going to take data from the spreadsheet for Africa 9, and it's going to Dodecad Africa 9 calculator and compare it. There we go. Excellent. So let me just lower this real quick. Okay, so now what you see is in that second column, what the spreadsheets allow you to do is see how the reference populations scored across these categories. And I'm putting in that second column, I put in how I scored on those second columns. Across these references, of course, across these categories. So you'll notice, for example, my European percentage, according to Dodecad Africa 9, is 62%. Their Tuscan sample averaged out at 69%. You'll notice that my Southwest Asian percentage was 27%. Their Tuscan sample was 29%. So why was Tuscan so high on my list? Not because I have any Tuscan ancestors, but simply because my percentages were closest to the Tuscan percentages. And it was also close to the North Italian percentages, but less so. That's why there was a higher distance for North Italian. So too with Moroccan Jews, the numbers get further and further away as you go across, right? But the main thing to keep in mind is that when you get a hit for a population in Oracle, specifically Oracle, it's not telling you anything about your ancestry. All it's telling you is how closely you matched up across these broad categories of like European, Southwest Asian, Biaka pygmy, etc. Right? That's really what it's measuring. It's not telling you anything about shared DNA or shared ancestry. And so, if I can, one more image. If you could show the image, it's titled Spreadsheet MDLP Comparison. Okay, so now these are certain populations when you use the MDLP World 22 calculator, right? And I highlighted the row for Sub-Saharan African, right? And you'll notice in the fifth column, or the fourth column if you don't count the population column, it's the Lemba column, right? And you notice the Lemba percentage for Sub-Saharan Africa, their Lemba samples averaged out to about 88 or 89% Sub-Saharan African across these categories. Now, what this means is if you give your results to GEDmatch and then you run it through MDLP World 22, the closer your Sub-Saharan African ratio is to 88%, the closer you'll be listed to the Lemba. Not because you actually descend from the Lemba, but only because it's measuring how your breakdown across these categories matches up with the breakdown of these populations across the same categories. So when they say, oh, look, I got Lemba and GEDmatch Oracle, they think it means they descend from the Lemba or they're autosomally related to the Lemba. All it means is that basically their Sub-Saharan African admixture is a certain distance away from the Lemba percentage in that category. And I know this was a lot to unpack, but I think this is important.
Okay, so
for example, if you have an African American who scores 80% in this particular calculator in the Sub-Saharan African category, they'll get compared to the Lemba. The main point that I was trying to illustrate here was what was said explicitly in that blog entry, the data mining DNA site, and this is also said on GEDmatch's own website, that it's not showing your ancestry. You could be related to these populations, but you're not demonstrating any relation to any of these populations by showing an Oracle result. All it's showing is similarities in the breakdowns across the broad categories that are used by a particular calculator. And keep in mind, there's a lot of different calculators available on GEDmatch.
So, to reiterate, first of all, the Lemba are not restricted to a single haplogroup. As we've illustrated, they run across a bunch of different haplogroups. And also, mainstream interest in Lemba has to do with their paternal lineage, not their autosomal DNA. And it is possible, as we've mentioned, some Lemba may share a Bronze Age common paternal ancestor with some mainstream Jewish Cohens, first of all. And it looks like I'll put up a post you've got to that in a second here. Second, Yacoba should know that one's haplogroup does not prevent any particular autosomal DNA, meaning that a person's strict paternal line does not prevent them from taking on the autosomal DNA of their other various recent ancestors. And by the way, everyone, this is from notes provided helpfully to me by Abu. Third, though, Yacoba has not demonstrated that he is related autosomally to Lemba. He's basing that on a GEDmatch Oracle result, one which he misunderstands, I believe, as well. And that's what we just showed there, too. And so Oracle is not measuring shared DNA between your kit and the reference samples. It's calculating how closely the breakdown of your ethnicity percentages match the breakdown of a reference population across the same categories. And that's what Abu just showed.
And they're very broad categories.
Yeah, so
that's why someone like me with no Italian ancestry can get a hit for Italian in GEDmatch, Oracle, specifically Oracle, because their Italian samples will have like this mix of like European, North African, and West Asian DNA, and I have a similar percentages, and it's the same thing. Anyone who has, let's say, somewhere around 80% or close to it, 70% Sub-Saharan African DNA is going to get a hit for Lemba because the Lemba have 88%. It has nothing to do with shared DNA, and so that subsection there was to show that there was a lot to unpack there, but it showed that they, on multiple levels, they didn't understand what was going on when they made this claim. How can I have haplogroup G if I'm autosomally related to the Lemba? It was a bad argument on like 3 different levels.
So remember, everyone, the whole reason why we're doing this is because this group of Hebrew Israelites, that circle, that sect, specifically talking about now, Teo, they are obsessed with trying to prove to the world that they are descendants from Jacob, and that's important for their future and all kinds of other things, instead of having an identity in Christ and being proud about how God made them. As you know, God made all these different folks across all these different cultures with diverse backgrounds, and it's beautiful, and then we come together as one church. That's just not enough for a lot of people. So this whole discussion about all this, it relates to them trying to prove that, and then they use this really false claim as a way to essentially then interpret the whole world and attack some people based upon whether they fit in or don't fit in, as we've seen here. So this all relates. This is all theology and apologetics. We're kind of going into the weeds on this because there's really no other way. And you know, we all make mistakes, but you know, these are like these popular YouTubers making these big, massive claims, and they're literally, it's almost like no matter what they're reading or looking at, they're misunderstanding it.
Yeah.
So, you know, you can't have any trust in what's coming out of these YouTube channels because of that.
And yet they demand trust. They demand almost a blind trust. You know, listen to us and don't listen to our critics because our critics hate you, you know?
And they become very upset, very emotional if you disagree with them. My goodness.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Cursing fits. It's that's I have a video titled Jacobus Contumely, and it's about, you know, the meltdown that they had on Orthodox Moore's channel because he questioned them. You know, God forbid anyone question them. They had a meltdown because Moore questioned them, and then I showed that, you know, just like they also had a meltdown with Ivri, with the Hebrew Israel. Anyone who questions them, they get very upset.
All right, Abu. Now I'm going to things we have received.
How about
that's where we're supposed to be at next?
Yes, and this is just to set this. Showing this more for fun. We're starting to taper off, and what this is going to show is. Wait, do you have the right video? Oh yeah, I guess so. Yeah, you're going to jump to the 53, 55 mark. Yes. I'm not sure.
That's things we have received. That ain't it?
DNA. It's on Berean's channel. Here, let me do my own.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay.
53, 55. We'll play it for about 3.5 minutes.
Yeah, let me
and
just
this is going to show. And again, I've said I don't get deep into DNA. I'll discuss it limited with notes, and oftentimes if I have someone I can talk to or speak with, I don't act like, you know, I'm that guy. So I try to say, okay, where's my lane? Where's my role? Doesn't mean I'll never talk about it, but you can see it's not a primary focus. And I will admit, okay, it's limited. I got to be like more prepared to talk about that kind of stuff, et cetera, et cetera. But Teo does claim that that's their bag and makes a whole bunch of stuff about it. But now we're going to show how little they understand about it. And they make these pretensions, honestly, but we're going to show that it's actually the opposite. And so contrary to their pretensions, they don't understand it. Huh?
I'm sorry, forgive me. What's on the screen is what you intend to play? Because I think that's a different video you have there.
That's not things we have?
No. Things we have received, it's the one in the notes. I can send it again. It's the after the YouTube part, it's HWJJXNPT0C4.
Okay. Yeah, let me see here. Are you sure that that's you're saying?
Because I think what you have on the screen there is
that's a leakage. Oh yeah, I guess you're right. Okay, let me see here. Maybe I've got it backwards here. Maybe I tell. Oh yeah, I might have. What about?
Well, no, that's the next one that I want to play. That one, yeah. But this is that's what we're gonna play later. But the one that I wanted to play now, Berean, things we have received. So it's not what's on the screen now. It's a different one.
All right, maybe I don't. Maybe I didn't load that one properly. Let me try to find it real quick here. Shout out to Jonathan Crocker for the super chat. But go ahead and break down what's going on while I load this up.
So what we're gonna get into, this is a little bit more for fun, but this is, again, I wanted to show this because they have this thing. One of the things, once they realized that their paternal ancestry was a problem. What's happened is, is this it? Yes,
yeah,
I think
I found it. I was on.
Okay, good. So to set this up, this is where they're starting to reach the point where they've reached the point by this discussion. This was on Berean's channel, where they wanted to abandon a paternal definition of Israelite and come up with an autosomal definition of Israelite. But it's incredibly vague. But where it gets even weirder is this is where they were in a sort of middle ground where they were trying to hold on to a paternal definition of Israelite, but saying don't look at haplogroups, right? Paternal haplogroups will tell you something about paternal ancestry across millennia, but they wanted you to ignore that, only focus on autosomal DNA. And it gets really convoluted because they tried to push this argument where this is what he's going to be insinuating, if you descend paternally from Jacob, you can never be more than 50% different from Jacob, right? So they have this idea. Yeah, it's insane, because there's a point that I had made before this discussion that let's say you enter into a population that you're different from, right? Or let's say you marry a woman in China, right? And you have a son with her. Your son will be 50% indicative of that Chinese population, right? And then if your son marries a local woman, that son will be about 75% indicative of that population, right? But your grandson will only share about 25% of your DNA with you. Your great grandson will share like 12%. Your great great grandson will share 6%. You understand? So within 7 generations, you would have a paternal ancestor that would be like 99% Chinese, if we could say such a thing, and maybe only 1% have something in common with you. They didn't understand that. So you're going to hear this where they try to insinuate that as long as he descends paternally from Jacob, he'll always be at least 50% autosomally indicative of Jacob. And he even says it's impossible. You can't ever get to 99%. You'll see it in this clip. And we're just showing this mainly to show how little they understand even the basics.
I'm gonna play this. I'm gonna step away for a second. So I'm gonna let it play for 3 minutes and 45 seconds. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Be clear. If a person descends from Jacob paternally, just on their strict paternal line, but on their other lines of descent, their father and their father's father and their father's father, they kept on marrying European women, so they're 95%, let's say, European. If they descend paternally from Jacob, are they an Israelite on your view?
Do you understand what you're saying? You're saying that, hold on, in every case, it's a male marrying a European female. So precisely. In that case, they're carrying Jacob's line every single generation. So you're not losing it. It's not being diluted. It is the maternal that's being diluted, not the paternal. So in your scenario, you have no loss. You always get 50% of the father, right? With the birth of a child, you get 50% of your mother and you get 50% of your father. So if your father is always a male coming from Jacob, you always have 50% of Jacob. You're not going to lose it.
No, I think that's not the case. Because look, if you have a person, let's say we have an Israelite and a non-Israelite, right? Israelite male, non-Israelite female. The child will be 50% of one thing and then 50% of that non-Israelite population. Their next son, if the son of that son who's 50% non-Israelite, from this non-Israelite population, another quarter, if they go on to have another son with a woman from that population, what you're going to get is a situation where they're 25% indicative of their grandfather and 75% indicative of the population that their mother and grandmother came from. And then if you go again, another son, you get a situation where it's somewhere around 12%. That's why within 7 generations, if a certain person who's not from a population, if their male line keeps marrying into a population that they're not from, within 7 generations, they're going to produce a son that's like 99% indicative of that population.
Well, I mean, your scenario is, look, go ahead and Google what genes a child of their parents get. It's always 50% of the father, 50% of the mother, right?
But he's saying about 3 generations. But by the time
it doesn't matter. He might start looking more white because of his mother's side. But he's always getting 50% of his father. Now,
you're saying that
Abu is saying that
50% of 50% is 25%.
Abu is saying that he can be bred out. Abu is saying he might get bred out, and maybe that.
Hold on, Abu.
Well, that's your scenario. Your scenario. You're saying at some point he keeps diluting, right? So I'm like, okay, at what point does he receive some other DNA other than his father? Because your scenario is he's always a descendant of Jacob.
Yes, he would still be a descendant of Jacob, and therefore those who actually hold, and I'm not saying you have to hold to a paternal definition of Israelite, but on a paternal definition of Israelite, he would still be an Israelite even if he's 99% His autosomal DNA
He
is
would never be 99% European.
And let me tell you why, though, because you're talking about you're always 50% of what your father is. But the thing is, if your father is only 50% indicative of a population,
Right about their work.
yeah, that's fine. That's fine. You heard.
This
Yeah.
is crazy. I mean, I don't. I'm running out of words. I don't. Again, guys.
We're running out of adjectives.
So I know, they think certain things about me. I'm not trying to go out of my way to like insult. I'm not even doing that. They're so confident about things that are pretty self-evidently wrong.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
I don't know what's going on. Honestly, everything sounds rude when I say it. I truly am befuddled why anyone listens to them. I do not comprehend what people are getting where they think, this is something we need to support. We need to watch this video. We need to be a Patreon. We need to this is something we need to get behind.
Well, I think their channel probably, for a lot of their fans, probably hits a lot of emotional triggers, right? In a positive sense, but I think also not a lot of people have looked closely at them. And for the very few people who have started to look closely at some of their arguments, that could be me, Alton Johnson, Orthodox Moore, the other members of the Yap gang, such as Yeshub and Ivri, the Hebrew of Israel, what they quickly do is they try to poison the well. They find something and they try to convince their audience not to pay attention to that person who is they'll depict that person as your enemy, basically, their audience's enemy. I'm their enemy, Orthodox Moore is their enemy, the Hebrew of Israel is their enemy. Everybody's their enemy, right? And I guess they're successful with their audience in emotionally manipulating them into that point. But I think what's at issue here is not a lot of people have looked closely at their arguments. But when you start to scrutinize their arguments, when you start to look closely, you notice some major lacunae in their understanding. That's the most polite way I could put it.
That means holes or gaps.
Yeah, holes. I'm sorry. Yeah, some gaps.
That's okay.
But the point of that portion was only to show how little they understand DNA, because, they thought that a patrilineal descendant of Jacob would always be 50% autosomally Israelite. Then because they say, oh, well, you get 50% from your father, right? And so they think that that 50% should just keep carrying down.
They don't see how it decreases with every.
Yeah, they didn't understand that 50% of 50% is 25%. Like even Berean pointed that out during that show. There were even people in the live chat, saying this is simple mathematics. What's going on here? But I wanted to show that because it shows, that they really struggle with this concept, and their concept of the autosomal Israelite is completely incoherent, and and that was at a period. This is before they fully jettisoned a patrilineal definition of Israelite. They were in this weird gray area then, where they were trying to say, well, no, we still hold to a paternal definition, but you got to determine your paternal line autosomally, not through haplogroups, and that was what you just heard there, was indicative of them thinking that your paternal line can be determined because you'll always be 50% of whoever you descend from paternally, which is just chaos. And it's flatly wrong.
I wonder where they're getting this stuff from. Like, I don't know. I guess it almost seems like they're just kind of totally unguided, meaning it's just them.
Yeah. And also I think an uncareful reading of whatever they're finding on the internet.
Because it doesn't seem like anyone's mentoring them in this stuff when they really kind of have anyone to help or with them. It's honestly, it's like you're their best teacher in the Yap gang. I feel like the Yap gang. The Yap gang
is devoted the most energy to them. If you go to the Genesis 49 channel, Genesis 49ers channel, there's probably, if I had to guess, there might be a dozen or more videos about Teo Ministries. Basically looking very closely at their claims on DNA.
Yeah, honestly, they should be glad by that. They should consider the Yap gang their best teachers, because it's clear that they need a mentor in the subject, and I think the Yap gang's probably the best candidate, and they should appreciate how they've educated them.
There's an important point to be made there, because something they had said in that, which we're not going to show it, but we're going to show a discussion in which it was said elsewhere. Something they said is they said about Berean TV, Brother Berean show. They said Berean will set you up, and what they mean by that, when they say Berean will set you up, is that Berean will allow on people who will question you, right? Which is by that logic, Berean sets everybody up.
Like Berean's trying to line people up or something. Man.
Yeah,
Come on.
Berean isn't providing them with a safe space. You know, he isn't shielding them from criticism, which is just absurd. But the reason why I bring that up is because they interpret attempted correction as like violence, when really, I mean, the truth of the matter is the reason why I think these dialogues are beneficial is because even if we get refuted, like let's say I put an argument out there, and let's say I do a Facebook post, right? I allow people to comment on my posts, and any critic can comment on my posts or my videos, because if I'm proven wrong on a subject, I actually benefit from that, right? I don't consider that violence, or like a refutation isn't violence, right? If tomorrow Orthodox Moore looks at one of my videos and refutes what I'm saying in that video, I would appreciate that, right? But they don't see it that way, and I think that's an important point to make, that they're deeply afraid, or I don't know, enraged by any attempt at correction on any subject, you know?
But what do you mean they interpret it as violence?
Well, I mean, they literally, like in their video on Alton Johnson, where they call him a beta male, one of the things they keep on saying is like, you don't know me. You know, I'll fight you. I'll whip your A. They literally say that. They don't, and I don't mean
What?
he says ASS. He literally says A, like he stops short of the word. And they say, I'm old school. I'll whip your A. You don't know. And that's them interpreting a refutation of a point they made as an attack. So therefore, they're insinuating that they would be justified in beating somebody up. You attacked them, right? You committed an act of violence against them by showing they can't read a map. So, you know, because they're old school, they would be justified in beating you up, you know? Something, that's the insinuation, you know? And that is, it's one thing I've said, because I've said this about Kelly Richardson, and I think it applies to them as well. You can, for anyone who's gone through academia, you can get a sense of who hasn't gone through academia, because you build a certain stamina for questioning and the appropriateness of correction, you know, because we're all flawed, we're all fallible, and we all have these like partial understandings of subjects. And when you go through academia, you're constantly questioned, like you know, like if you're presenting a thesis on a particular topic, you're going to have a panel of professors that are going to pick it apart, you know. But outside of academia, there's a lot of people who interpret scrutiny as literally as violence, and as hatred. You disagree with me, therefore you hate me. You know, you disagree with me, therefore you're my enemy. You tried to say I was wrong on this particular topic. You know, it's an attack.
Yeah,
on
especially in graduate. I mean, like postgraduate level. You know, they're not going to be, you know, coddling you. They're going to be analyzing every little thing and coming after you, and you know, not mincing words. You know, they're gonna. Because I remember some of the notes I got on some of one time, okay, people are gonna think I had bad grades in seminary. I didn't. I did pretty good. But one paper I remember, it was like this really long report, and there was one page where we were supposed to do like this graphic analysis of a scripture where you're supposed to like visually represent it and all this kind of stuff. And I didn't do a good job, and I forgot it was supposed to be done, so I kind of just did this thing at the last second. Anyways, the comment was like, "Are you kidding me? This is supposed to be graduate level work. What is this page?" It was like that. You know? I was like, "Oh, that's embarrassing," and it brought down my grade. I think a whole thing. I went from like an A to a B because of this one page. But anyways, I'm just saying they're not going to spare your feelings, and you know it's part of the process. You're like, "Oh, I better do better next time." You know, can't be playing around. Anyways, okay, so it looks like we have a final clip left.
Oh, yes. Let me see. Yes. So just as a closing note, the final section, the final subsection of the DNA section is just to sort of touch on the controversy which we've alluded to before, this sort of, you know, the Yap Gang versus Teo Ministries. Actually, could you show the image? We have the image. The Yap Gang is not only known for their sophistication on DNA, but also their funny memes, which they post on social media. So there's an image that I sent you. It's titled Yap V. Yes. The young lady we mentioned earlier, she made this, and this was her depiction. This was her depiction of the debate between the Yap Gang and Teo Ministries, and I thought this was too hilarious not to show. Right? It's basically the Yap Gang chasing them down, and I guess, but and then we'll show a video clip in a moment. I just wanted to show that just for fun, but the sort of disagreements between the Yap Gang and Teo Ministries, and by the way, like I said earlier in the show, hopefully one day in the future, maybe you could have on some of those guys to have some discussions on DNA. And I'm not saying a debate or anything like that. I'm saying, points of common interest and stuff like that, because I think they have a lot of interesting things to share on, what others get wrong on this and their own nuanced view. So hopefully you can do a discussion on the future. But anyway, getting back to what I wanted to cover with the Yap Gang and the Teo Ministries, a lot of it boils down to the fact that the Yap Gang focuses on patrilineal descent, right? And like I said, Teo Ministries used to hold to a patrilineal definition of Israelite, but they abandoned it for this incoherent autosomal Israelite model, right? And Teo Ministries continues to be like deeply offended by the Yap Gang's model, right? Because they hold that all patrilineal descendants of Jacob fall within a subset of haplogroup E, right? And like I said, as we alluded to earlier, this is a problem because if that's true, that would imply that the Teo twins who have haplogroup G do not descend paternally from Jacob. That's essentially what the Yap Gang model would say tacitly, even if they didn't have any arguments, right? And so because the Teo twins have such a shaky understanding of DNA, they sort of tried to challenge them, but then didn't want to acknowledge that they got anything right. And so instead they resorted to these insults, right? These tactics such as insulting Yap Gang members and accusing them of being secretly quote unquote white, or, and another thing they did, which is funny, there was even attempts to sort of privately negotiate deals where the Yap Gang wouldn't publicly disagree with them, right? And
yeah,
then,
you just did a video on this kind of thing.
Yes, the
folks,
manipulation.
Kelly, Sister E, a number of them, I'm not going to name them all, but it's kind of a tactic, a couple of different tactics, and you dropped about this. You'll get this thing first. No one will challenge us on this. I dare you to challenge us on this. And if they're challenged, why are you challenging me on this? How dare you, right? And then the other move is, I've been challenged on this. Well, I'll tell you what. We take down our stuff related to this topic, and you take down your stuff related to this topic. Just call it a truce and be done with it.
And then the other thing they did, and it's funny, we didn't show it, but in that discussion, because they did it with the Hebrew of Israel in a subtle way, they'll do this thing where somebody on their side will get upset, almost like violently upset that they were questioned, right? The cursing fits and all that. And then someone on their side will step in and say, everyone needs to calm down. Everybody calm down, right? So like you have a situation where the Hebrew of Israel is calm and collected, and one of the Teo twins is cursing, and they'll say, well, everyone needs to calm down, right? And that starts this whole idea of a truce. And right after, for example, when the Teo twins had their meltdown on Orthodox Moore's channel, Sister E announced that they need to take everyone needs to calm down, both sides need to calm down, and they need to take the conversation private. Like, that's a major theme with that circle, that they can put out arguments in public, but disagreement with them, the only way to properly disagree with them is to disagree with them in private. And what's interesting is they tried to negotiate this private conversation where they would, sort of negotiate a situation where, that was the insinuation of the Teo twins, maybe, and Sister E, is maybe we could have an arrangement where you don't criticize them publicly, right? But whatever the case, that whole thing sort of fell apart. But what did this, at least for the most part, the clip we're going to show, right, was from that private conversation, because there is something very telling in that conversation. And this is in that video that's titled Yap Gang Meeting with Teo Twins and Sister E.
Yeah, I got that one ready, yeah.
Right. So we're going to show that in a moment. But let me see if I could. Exactly. Yeah, it's going to. If you could jump to the 1327 mark. If I could set this up, right? Let's see. Okay. Well, let me say this. Regarding their autosomal Israelite model, right? There is the big question of, if you're going to insist on an autosomal Israelite, that begs the question of what we would be comparing, modern persons, modern individuals to. Like, you would say, why would we compare them to Lemba, right? There's no grounds on which to think the Lemba are necessarily autosomally representative of the biblical Jacob, right? Why not, say, the Natufian samples, or why not, some Bronze Age Levantine sample, and so on, right? But whatever the case, the Natufian samples create an issue, because the haplogroups that were found amongst them were subclades. Now, there's only 5 samples, but nonetheless, the haplogroups that were found amongst the Natufians were E haplogroups, right? And so the Yap Gang has used that as one piece of evidence for their model which argues for haplogroup E falling within the descendants of Shem, right? And so the clip that we're going to show, it shows an attempt of in their private conversation, which was later made public, of the Teo twins trying to grapple with the Natufian samples, right? And one of the first things that they do is they ask it what I think is a legitimate question in a vacuum, but an awkward question for an Israelite ministry that argues that the African diaspora is comprised of descendants of Jacob. They ask the question, how do we know the Natufians weren't Canaanites, right? And if somebody wants to argue that, fine. But the thing is, at least on a global flood model, and I would assume they hold to a global flood model, I'm not saying they have to, but on a global flood model, if the Natufians, who were E-carriers, were Canaanites, which is to say descendants of Ham, the logical implication of that would be that all E-carriers are descendants of Ham. Like, it's impossible to detach E-carriers from Ham on a global flood model if the Natufians are Hamites, as they tried to insinuate. So what they were indirectly doing, is you'll see in this clip, is they're flirting with the idea of throwing all the E-carriers, all the people who have haplogroup E in the West African diaspora, under the bus. And then they sort of, as if there wasn't, to not leave any room for doubt, they then move on from there in this clip and say, how do we know that the dominant haplogroup amongst, the diaspora, the West African diaspora, how do we know that doesn't come from our captors who raped our women? In other words, they're going to insinuate that rather than deny their own haplogroup, rather than accept the idea that their own haplogroup doesn't go back to Jacob, they're going to flirt with the idea that the majority haplogroup amongst the West African diaspora might go back to men who took Israelites captive and raped Israelite women. I'm sorry for using such strong language, but that's precisely the language they use in this clip that you're about to play. And it's significant because it shows that they're willing to throw the majority of their own followers, their own supporters, under the bus for the sake of not questioning their own paternal lineage. And the sort of the self-centeredness of this is incredible.
Here we go.
He has been bred out. Right, but we wouldn't look to use right in the court of law for that. We're talking about an unbroken chain. We're going back millennia trying to track.
Can you go to the 1327?
We're not looking for child support within
an example that, the brother is 97%. He's not, let's say European is a good one. He's 97% European with a Jacob haplogroup, right? Who's related to Jacob, right? Because he's 97% autosomally, he's 97% something else. He has been bred out.
Right, but we wouldn't look to use right in the court of law for that. We're talking about an unbroken chain. We're going back millennia trying to track a people. We're not looking for child support within the past 2 or 3 generations. We're talking historical, because autosomal stops after 6 to 8 generations. It starts to degrade. Like, you know what I'm saying? You can't go back further than that.
But so, we all agreed that autosomal was used on Ramses.
But Ramses would have his autosomal.
Say what?
Oh, no, keep going.
Okay.
They're about to hit the point. Let it go for another 2 minutes.
You pulled his DNA. So it was still
everything we're talking about. Yeah. Now you're on it. This is why we were pushing.
Find it. But you would have to. But we are saying an unbroken chain from father to son down the line, the way the Bible tells us. This is
so if we found that guy with 97% European
because we have a living example that runs with the Yap Gang. His name is Jafo. He's a Karaite.
So I will say, let's hold on one second. Everybody, let's make sure we allow everybody to get their thoughts out. So, So I'm gonna stop right there. So
I haven't spoken much.
I would like to say something after the brother. I can't see the screen, so I don't know who's talking. But
this is cool, but I just want to share this and get y'all opinion on it, right? Because y'all say it's an unbroken line, right? Because of the haplogroups. Okay, this from 23andMe. It says,
actually, I'm sorry. We're too
not
far
on your
ahead.
direct maternal paternal line, you are not likely.
Can you hear me? I'm sorry. Can you hear me now? I'm sorry. I don't hear you though. I see you talking, but I think you're muted.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think we're too far ahead. I think you're about 32 minutes in. I was wondering if you could go.
Oh,
to
it's
the
1327.
Yeah, 1327.
I'm so sorry. I thought you said 3127.
Sorry about that.
No,
1327.
that's not your
Yeah.
fault.
No problem. No problem. But still, that was an interesting portion as well. But
Okay. Sorry, guys. I played the wrong part. That was not the part I was supposed to play. Excuse me. My bad. Here we go. This
He's
coming
beyond
up in about 10
generation.
seconds. This is the part. Here we go. Okay. Oops.
Anybody? Yeah. So Ramses III is beyond 9 generations. They use YSTR profiling on him. The other issue is that, let's say, the Levant is legit, and this is where, Israelites saw. This is where the Natufians were found. This was also the land of the Canaanites. And so that's another question at this point. How do we know that the Natufians were not Canaanites? And then there's multiple issues with what happened to our people, right? We were chased all around the world by our enemies. We were fleeing. We were also dominated by them. So the haplogroup we have today, even though it's dominant and it's E, why would that not reflect the captors' DNA who enslaved us, who raped our women? Because the Muslims,
right, that's enough right there.
They use our women as sex.
So he's like saying almost everybody is actually a Gentile, product of the oppressor heathen there.
They're willing to still acknowledge them as Israelites in some sense, but before they're willing to consider the possibility that they don't descend paternally from Jacob, they're going to flirt with the idea of throwing the majority of the Israelite spectrum under the bus. That's what's going on there. It was first subtle with the Natufian part, where they're saying the Natufians might be Canaanites, and if people want to argue that, fine. But within the context of a Hebrew Israelite ministry, this is the implications of that are huge. But at least you could say, oh well, maybe they didn't understand it, maybe they didn't intend the logical implication of that. But then they remove all doubt when in the very next breath they basically say, well, how do you know haplogroup E doesn't go back to our captors who raped our women? They're basically saying that the E carriers, they're flirting with the idea that maybe the E carriers descend paternally from non-Israelites, which would be the majority of their followers, the majority of the West African diaspora. They're willing to, they accuse us of attacking the entire Israelite spectrum. They accuse me of that all the time when I think my foci, the stuff that I focus on is fairly muted and fair and niche in all that regard. But they'll basically say that the majority of their own supporters don't descend paternally from Jacob. That's where they're willing to go. They don't say it explicitly, but that's what they were flirting with. And I think that's incredible. And it says something about their psychology.
Seriously. So there we see, this is wild. So the Teo ministries used to hold to patrilineal descent or definition of Israelite, but they've abandoned that for some kind of autosomal Israelite model, which is vague and really incoherent. And they get pretty offended, deeply offended by criticism and the Yap Gang's position that all patrilineal descendants of Jacob fall within a subset of haplogroup E. So that's the Yap Gang model. But the Teo twins have haplogroup G. And it's impossible for E carriers and G carriers to descend from the same Bronze Age progenitor. And so the tactics that they've resorted to is insulting Yap Gang members, as we've seen, accusing them of being secretly white, trying to privately negotiate a deal where they won't publicly disagree with them, and then blocking them, insulting them some more, and then misrepresentation behind the safety of the block wall. And this autosomal Israelite, model that they have is really incoherent. They won't clarify. They haven't clarified the precise autosomal threshold that one would have to meet. So what's their rubric? What's their standard? What's the benchmark? What's the parameters? They can't justify this preferred standard for an autosomal Israelite. Why not Natufians or Bronze Age Levantine samples rather than Limbo? Why not? And now they are saying... They used to say people were scared to discuss DNA with them, but now they're saying DNA is irrelevant and that you really just determine who's an Israelite by the curses. And so this is what's going on, and it's not a good look. And, you know, the maps and the DNA maps in this should really make anyone who's following this and staking their life on these kind of claims, they should really reconsider trusting these guys as a source. Perhaps even people who give them cover, you know?
I'm looking at the live chat now. I see Orthodox Moore said that part there is literally jaw-dropping, and he's referring to the part where they basically floated the question, how do you know that the E-carriers don't descend from, I'm sorry to use the language, the product of sexual assault, you know?
Yeah.
It is.
Well,
yeah, he's right. And he's right about that. It's to think that this is an Israelite ministry. You know, they accuse so many other people of attacking the entire Israelite spectrum, but then they're going to do that. Then they're going to say that, well, what if an Israelite ministry saying, what if the majority of the West African diaspora doesn't descend paternally from Jacob? That's basically what they were saying. And it's incredible. And it like I said, it says something about their psychology, because their attitude tacitly seems to be everything will fall before we fall, you know? Everything can go before we can see that, you know, that we don't descend paternally from Jacob.
Well, the Twin Towers.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
Too soon?
Too soon, yes.
Yeah, so they're ready. The Teo twins are ready to declare most of the West African diaspora does not descend from Jacob paternally, but may basically be the products of, you know, foreign invaders or foreign captors or some kind of foreign oppressor, before they would consider their own self, their own situation. So that's why they propose Natufians or Canaanites, which is to say descendants of Ham, which they would be saying they're not, and that E-carrying Natufians were patrilineal descendants of Ham, and then it would be impossible to avoid the conclusion that E-carriers descend from Ham. And they follow up that by proposing that the E-carriers were descended from people who had been raped. And so, guys, you got to understand what's going on with that. It's as, I mean...
it's arm flailing is really what it is. It's the internet, the electronic equivalent of arm flailing on so many levels. I think that's what we've seen different permutations of tonight. We've basically reached the end of this sort of survey of interesting claims by Teo Ministries. But I'd say the common theme throughout is arm flailing, you know, just bad ideas shot from the hip.
Oh, my goodness. Okay, so have we covered what we need to cover for tonight?
Yeah, I think so. It's been a long discussion, and I think, I think this sums it up.
Yeah, our goal
We've been on for
tonight
about 2 hours.
was to catch you all up to speed and show you that the Teo twins are doubly wrong. Wrong about maps, wrong about genetics, wrong about geography, wrong about genealogy. And I think that is what we saw tonight. So I appreciate that very much, Abu, all the hard work and effort you've put in.
Yeah. I'm glad we got it out before they fully put us to flight, because if you could, as you recall at the beginning of the show, any minute now, they're going to have us running away with our tails between our legs. Could you actually put that on the screen just to close? That's like a final message to end the show on, if you could. That's the one.
But hey, put God first, the channel. You've got it backwards. Teo didn't take out the Yap Gang. The Yap Gang took out Teo. You got the it's the other way around.
Well, they took them out of the list of people that could could comment on their videos. That's what they took them out of.
Oh yeah.
They added them to their block list. That's
which is
they took them out of the list of people they're willing to, the ever shrinking list of people they're willing to dialogue with. Yeah. Yeah, so here, this is I love this. I like to call this the periodic reminder. You know, they wrote this back in November. That, you know, any day now, you know.
I don't even know what
they're gonna put us to flight. Me and you and I guess Alton Johnson is on this list as well. You know, whom they repeatedly called.
Did I talk to the Teo twins ever? I don't remember talking to them. I remember talking to.
Yeah, no, I don't think so either. But the thing is, you sort of represent the perpetual boogeyman, because you've questioned certain things. So you know you're sort of the.
I haven't done much on them besides calling out their 2019 false prophecy stuff.
Yeah. I guess that's it. But and also you've either questioned or posted videos questioning people within their inner circle. You know, so most notably Kelly and you know, Kelly.
Well, it'd be interesting to do a follow up, but a different focus. For example, you know, we're talking about doubly wrong here with Teo. I'd love to do one of those on Ron Dalton too. I think.
Ah, that's one you should discuss with the Yap Gang. That is, they have incredible stuff on just how I realized watching some of the Genesis 49er videos on Genesis 49ers channel, watching their stuff, their critiques of Ron Dalton, I realized that I badly misunderstood how wild Dalton's thought process was. Like, if you look back at our show that you and I did on your channel about DNA back in 2020, at the time, I was wrongly under the impression that Ron Dalton limited Israelites to E1B1A carriers, right? Turns out he's completely wild on that subject. He'll accept any haplogroup as long as they have the right skin tone and the right oral history, you know? And then when I had never looked at his books, Yeshub has apparently bought his books and has shown the stuff that, like, the way he references stuff, like he'll have like a footnote which will say like a TV show about aliens on Netflix, this kind of stuff. It's just, oh my goodness, it's really I struggle to find a charitable way to put it, but it's aliens, bro. He believes in yes, and it helps to describe his Israelite model. I remember one of my favorite moments. They actually Yeshub and Ron Dalton had a debate, and Yeshub, who's interested in DNA, stuck to discussing the nuances of DNA, and they got to a point where the gray aliens, Stargate, etc. Yeah, he mentions Stargate. Yeshub was sticking to the DNA because they're trying to figure out who descends paternally from Jacob. And at one point, they were discussing whether people in Papua New Guinea descend from Jacob, right? And Yeshub was saying they have completely different haplogroups from the majority of the West African diaspora. And Ron Dalton said, but I spoke to one of them on the telephone, and he told me that they have an oral history about how they came on a boat, and they used to have a book that was like, had their laws, and they accidentally dropped the book in the water. And so Yeshub said, so wait a minute, I'm focusing on DNA, and this guy is telling you a story that someone told him over the telephone, on that note, I do hope maybe you'll have some of those guys on to discuss Ron Dalton or discuss other subjects. But on that note, it's gotten quite late, and we've been on 2 hours. It's been fun. I'm glad we got to do this. And like I said, I'm glad we got this out before they fully put us to flight. I know
me too.
Collapsing any moment now. So
yeah. Well, good job, man. I appreciate it. Much love. I'm gonna drop a video by you and me tomorrow where we talk about the fallacy of the undistributed middle.
Oh, excellent! Is that tomorrow? I thought that was going to be like.
Yeah, I moved it.
Oh no, you're right.
I moved it. It was on Tuesday, but yeah. Excellent. All right, y'all. God bless. Have a beautiful night. Let me close with. Let's see. I know I got a little. Let's do this for the outro. The classic Street Apologist theme. All right, y'all. God bless. Peace out. Shalom.
Turn your radio up. Whoa. Radio time. Whoa. You're now listening to Street Apologist. Street Apologist. Street Apologist. Street Apologist. On the radio. Street Apologist. Street Apologist. Street Apologist. Street Apologist. Whoa. On the radio.